The Prospect House and Civil War Museum provides visitors with a unique and comprehensive view of the Civil War, the settling of Battle Lake, and life in this Minnesota resort community leading up to the stock market crash of 1929. All documented in a vast collection of personal artifacts and archives kept primarily by one family.
Welcome to the Prospect House. This house was started by my great-grandfather, the last Civil War survivor in Otter Tail County.
James Allison Colehour, or Cap as he would later be called, joined the 92nd Illinois Volunteer Infantry on September 4th, 1862.
I'm Jay Johnson. This is my great-grandfather's Civil War collection. He was the last Civil War survivor in Otter Tail County. He died in 1938 at nearly the age of 100 years. Basically, he lived twice as long as anyone else in the area. He was shot twice in the Civil War. He was in the war for an entire 3 years. Cap started out the war in Mount Carroll, Illinois, in northwestern Illinois. He came up through Rockford and down through Chicago and down the Ohio River Valley. He ended up in Nashville, Tennessee with typhoid fever. It just about killed him. He was in the hospital for 3 months. When he finally recovered from that, he was shot the first time through the right shoulder at the Battle of Chickamauga. 4 months later, he was shot through the left shoulder at the Battle of Muscle Shoals, Alabama. That is a rare photograph of wounded Union veterans in the hospital in Nashville, Tennessee in 1863. So it isn't him in the photo, but it's as close as you could possibly get. And then these are the sleeves to his uniform with a bullet hole in the right shoulder and the left shoulder where he was shot. The Bible he was carrying when he was shot in the Battle of Chickamauga. The letters that he received when he was in the hospital in Nashville with typhoid, and his nurse, McRoberts from Ohio, and typhoid fever serum. I found that chest with those sleeves and 175 Civil War letters in it up on the third floor in that chest nearly 7 years ago. And that's when I started to assemble his collection. Right next to this picture of Cap holding his Civil War rifle is this letter that says, "Blood from wound received at Muscle Shoals, Alabama, January 25th, 1864. And this is his blood on this letter. I just found that powder keg here last week. You identified the Civil War binoculars next to it. Violin that he sent home from the battlefield in North Carolina in 1865. In that box. My great-grandfather used to play it all the time, I guess.
In addition to the artifacts, what makes this Civil War exhibit so special is the personal narrative.
This display is all about the Battle of Chickamauga, the bloodiest two-day battle of the Civil War. The other two battles were Gettysburg and Antietam. Chickamauga is a Cherokee Indian word that means river of death. It was very appropriate in this case. My great-grandfather wrote on these pictures, "My brigade, I lay here all night after wounded." That's Crawfish Springs. That's a hospital zone at Chickamauga. Finally, Dr. Helm, the company physician, got around to treat him, and he took a rag and soaked it in kerosene and pulled it through the bullet hole in his shoulder and out the back. And he told Cap to go to the rear, which was a good thing because 2 hours later the hospital zone was overrun by the Confederates, and all the wounded and Dr. Helm were thrown into Andersonville Prison, probably the worst place in the world at that time and almost certain death. But somehow or another Dr. Helm got out on a prisoner exchange, and so when Cap was shot through the left shoulder 4 months later, he was surprised to see Dr. Helm there, and Dr. Helm was surprised to see him. And Dr. Helm took a rag and soaked it in kerosene and pulled it through that bullet hole. And he told Cap, he said, "Boy, you better get yourself home on furlough and stay there. You're going to get yourself killed." Later on after the war, Dr. Helm and Cap wrote back and forth together to each other, and Colonel Wilder is later on a General Wilder during the Civil War wrote to him too. General Wilder was the leader in the Battle of Chickamauga.
After the war, Cap worked for the Chicago Post Office. He married Kate in 1872 and built a house in Lakeview, Illinois. In the early 1880s, his doctor advised him to relocate somewhere with better atmosphere. At the urging of Edmund A. Everts, an old friend and army buddy who had already settled in Battle Lake, they moved here. In 1882, Cap built another house with the architectural plans of the Chicago House. In 1886, the hotel was built, attached to the house, and the Prospect Inn opened for business. It accommodated as many as 100 guests at a time during its busy seasons. In 1902, Cap built another house and moved his family next door, providing more rooms for guests in the hotel. The Prospect Inn served as a summer resort and hotel through 1924.
In 1924, that's the last year they operated the old hotel, and then in 1929, my great-grandfather passed the property on to his daughter and her husband, Ernest Wilkins, over here. They're the two that remodeled the old tourist hotel into the nice house that you see and are in today. And they took the Chicago house off and moved it across the street and down 4 doors where it still sits.
Today, the Prospect House Museum is still filled with the family's furnishings.
When my great-grandfather passed the property on to his daughter, my grandmother, and her husband, Ernest Wilkins, Ernest had just inherited some money from his father's death, and he spent about half of it refurnishing and rebuilding the old hotel. This is the furniture and the rugs in here and the buffet that he bought when it was refurnished.
The first 2 floors remain as they were finished in 1929.
They did the walls in a special kind of stucco effect covered with 5 coats of paint and 2 coats of varnish. It was probably very expensive at the time, but if it lasts 80 years, it's cheap. The seats on the chairs are made out of horsehair, manes and tails. It's very durable stuff. When this was a hotel, there was actually 10 bedrooms on this floor, and now there's 4 after it was remodeled. This is the master bedroom as my grandparents had it. This is the original paint on the walls. The furniture in here is all original from Dayton's in 1929, and that's the original bedspread on the bed. Electricity was a luxury. We've got a chandelier, a full bath with a shower, built-in closet, built-in telephone, fireplace, and a deck. This is a collection of my great-grandparents' things in here. Pretty much everything is from the 1870s or thereabouts. The bedroom set was given to them by her parents, my great-grandmother's parents, in 1872 for their wedding. It includes the bed, the washstand, and the dresser. My great-grandfather made this settee here in 1876, and he carved the date right in it. He made the matching chair for himself at the same time. The shawl on the mannequin in the corner dates back to the Civil War. My great-grandfather sent that home from one of the battlefields in 1864 for his mother Hannah. The coverlet on the bed dates back to the Civil War. That was made on a loom by a man for market. They did that sort of thing, men did that sort of thing in the off-season. If you're going to buy a suit in 1896, it cost you $11. You can pick out these different kinds of materials here, and if you wanted to see what you looked like, you just pull out the right paper doll.
K. Wilkins Johnson was a talented artist and one of the charter members of Art of the Lakes Association.
This is my mother's bedroom when she was growing up. She painted every picture in here but one, and that's the portrait of her done by a fellow artist there leaning up against the sofa. It really doesn't do her justice because that's a picture of her in a little gold frame. She was very good looking, and she had the personality of the Queen of England. She was very proper. But she painted everything else in here except for that one. Her watercolors are especially nice. Also in this room is her wedding dress on the back here, and pictures of my mother when she was a teenager down in front. The piece of cabinetry here is not an armoire, it's a Murphy bed from the old house that they had in Chicago. My great-grandmother's parents probably bought that for my great-grandparents so they'd have a place to stay. All of the particularly old furniture arrived here from Chicago in 1882 by train and horse and wagon.
Upstairs, the third floor remains as it was during the hotel years from 1886 to 1924. Stepping back in time, we discover the hall filled with original hotel furnishings and equipment, and the interior in its unremodeled state. Tiny rooms, old wooden floorboards, even the room numbers that Cap cut from a wall calendar.
This is the only part of the house that's still the old hotel, so I wanted to get the old hotel things in here.
In one corner, an assortment of hats, saved over many decades.
Hats were in for a while. You could wear a whole salad on your head and think you were in fashion.
The furniture in this room was placed here when Prospect Inn first opened in 1886. This old hotel room displays toys from several generations of children, some toys dating back to before the Civil War. In another room, we find an amazing doll collection.
That's my mother's bed in there, and most of the dolls are in the 1920s. That's when my mother was a youth. The doll room has got my mother's doll collection in it. Her paper doll collection is over 2,000 pieces, a lot of them handmade. The paper dolls over the bed are my grandmother's. They're the ones I like to play with. The colors on them are awesome. They date back to the 1890s.
The Prospect House and Civil War Museum is one of the most unique and interesting places I've visited. In one sense, it's a very personal story about several generations of one family. But it also provides an in-depth look at how Americans lived, worked, and played during this period. The collection is a work in progress as Jay continues to discover items in the house.
My great-grandfather, Cap, built this serving cart for the hotel. And on this serving cart are a miscellaneous collection of items that some of which I know are and some of which I have no idea. You can see a horseshoe here and half of an ox shoe there. Corkscrew, possibly for things for the hotel. A crescent wrench, an iron big enough to iron I don't know what. Silverware of my great-great-grandparents from 1827. This is a sugar cutter. It's for cutting sugar lumps for the hotel. I don't know what this ladle was for. I'd like to know. These are the old candles, kind of petrified tallow candles. A little bit of everything in here. These scissors are particularly unusual. I was using these one day and I said, well, what's with these? They don't cut very good. And on one side where it was all ground up, it said patented 1885. And I thought, well, that's not very old for around here. And I turned around and looked at the other side, and it says Henry Sears and Son, 1865. That's before Sears had met Roebuck, and that's my great-grandfather had taken two broken scissors and put the two halves together and made a pair of scissors out of them.
For more information on Prospect House and Civil War Museum in Battle Lake, visit our website at lakescountry.tv.